might just invite my panelists to join me on stage, and I will do very brief introductions to them if you guys want to come up and join me. Morning, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. I have such an amazing panel to introduce in a second, but I just wanted to say it's fantastic to support this talk series. So Vogue Business is partnering with Berlin Fashion Week on this series, and it's a subject that's very, very close to our hearts at Vogue Business because it's one of our main pillars of content. We write a lot about circular fashion models and some of the challenges and solutions that the industry is exploring. We're gonna, I guess, Yasmin's done a fantastic job of kind of, introducing the concept really of circularity. We're gonna probably touch on two of those parts, the consumer and the sort of company side, and what we can do to both change the industry, but also how we foster that emotional connection, that kind of love of design. So, thank you to the panelists for joining me. Thakane, you're here with your kind of a brand hat on as a designer, but also as a consultant. So we're going to get a good overview from you, I think, in terms of how your clients are approaching these topics as well. And then, of course, we have some designers on the panel also to talk about kind of innovative approaches to sustainable designs. We're really going to get into a bit of the nitty-gritty of how we design in a more circular way, in a way that encourages longevity. So Nina from RIANNA, Nina, Julia from Milk of You had your show yesterday, congratulations. And Dilys from Centre for Sustainable Fashion, who I would love to come to first to give us a bit of a scene setter, really, just in terms of your work, what you're doing at the moment. I mean, this is probably, it's safe to say, an audience that understands that this is so important. But where are we at in the industry at the moment? Where's the current thinking? Are we seeing change starting to accelerate?
Good question. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. And yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm also here because I'm on the jury for Berlin Contemporary. And I have to say, the first thing I want to say is just how amazing it is to come to Berlin. The energy around fashion is like no other place. And it fills me with excitement to be here because, in answer to your question, fashion's always lots of different things. However, the dominant narrative of fashion is about the industrialized mass production element of the industry. But over 99% of fashion businesses are small and micro, and they don't necessarily get the conversations that are around the amazing things that they're doing. So I think there are these two massive stories of fashion. One is about the fact that whilst everybody knows that fashion is something that is part of all of our lives, and it's something that connects us, literally our skin to the earth, because everything we're wearing comes from the earth, but at the same time it's exploiting and extracting. We know that story. But also at the same time, there's amazing designers doing incredible things all around the world. And that's, I think, what I want to amplify. And at the centre, our ambition, rather large ambition, is to find ways to live well together in a more than human world. Because fashion is about our interdependence with the more than human world. And we use a framework that we use with designers, whether they're small businesses or design teams in large businesses. And we look at prosperity in social terms, in cultural terms, environmental terms, and economic terms. And actually what Yasmin was saying earlier on, the cultural dimension of fashion is potentially the most powerful because all of us make decisions every day about what we wear. And our legislators see a huge industry, and we see an incredible set of people around the world that are employed. Unless they've got designers wanting to work for these businesses, there is no business. I work in university. A lot of our students don't want to be part of the problem. They want to create their own ways of being able to do things. So it's an exciting time to be a designer, but it's also a perilous time.
And Thakane, as a consultant, what are you seeing the response from the different clients that you're working with? Why are they bringing you in?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I think in terms of the different clients that I'm working with, they're kind of a lot of the time more established brands who really are already into the sort of fashion system of mass production. And so a lot of the response and a lot of the requests are in order to comply with the new legislations, which are asking for more transparency in the supply chain and so on. Of course, with the eco-design rules, that's where the challenge really is in terms of the mindset of brands. And I think one of the quick things that they would like to already check off is the sort of reuse, recycle, resell kind of aspect of circularity. But as Yasmin was already correctly saying, reducing is really where the biggest impact is going to be. And that's something which I think is challenging for a lot of the CSR managers who I speak to, because of course the financial model of the brand itself is based on that volume mindset and on that industrious kind of a process. So I think what's really exciting to see, for example, with brands like Pangaea, is with innovative material choices that are a lot less impactful on the environment, or, for example, also the use of dead stock fabrics, trying to really be as efficient as possible within their supply chains, and nearshoring as well. When it comes to circularity, again, I think the first target is on that renting, reusing, recycling, upcycling. In terms of systematic change which is needed, I think that's a conversation which really has to involve also the financial mindset of the companies themselves. Yeah.
And we're going to come and talk to a few of the challenges that we have around sort of operating within the market that we have at the moment, which is, as you say, kind of very much measure success by growth, doesn't it? So we will talk about that, but I think we'll probably start to draw that out anyway when we talk about how the sort of brand founders on the panel are approaching this. So Nina, maybe if we come to you first, what's your approach? How do you approach fashion? Is it a slow fashion approach? Do you bring in circular models into your production?
So when we started RIANNA Nina 10 years ago, the word like upcycling didn't really exist.
Yeah.
We did a brand that was based on upcycling because we met on a vintage furniture fair. RIANNA and I, we just clicked. We loved vintage all our lives, and this was not our mission to make a sustainable brand. We just said we want to make a good brand. We want to treat the garments with respect, and that also means that the client treats it with respect. When you look, we have our atelier here on Torstrasse. We have a team of 10 seamstresses, of artisans, and this is what we did from the beginning. We were involved in all the process, the way we source our fabrics, the way we buy those fabrics. We don't just order them online. It's something very emotional. We are the people at 6 o'clock in the morning on the flea market, no matter the rain, no matter the nice dinner, the evening before during Press Fashion Week. We said, this is what the brand is about. And then we bring it to our atelier. We have artisans who put so much work and love and dedication into every piece. And that's why it comes at a very high price point, because we always say we bake a very expensive cake because of the ingredients we put in and the work we put in. And that's why the collection is also pretty expensive, but there is no other way. And I think this is being sustainable doesn't mean that you have to be sustainable all the way, because especially as a small brand, it's super difficult. But you have to treat the people you work with and the garments you use with a lot of respect. And this is what it is about for me.
Has that approach changed in any way in the 10 years since founding the brand? Have you felt, you've needed to adapt, or perhaps you've experimented with different ways of doing things?
I mean, of course, we had a different vision for the brand at the beginning. We were way more romantic how we want to approach the market. We said we don't gonna do seasons. We just do our thing. We just want to present our special garments. But at the end, then we were faced with the reality of the market. And even though when you work with wholesalers who share your vision on a marketing perspective, and they tell you yes, we want you to be sustainable and we want this brand to work like that. And then they come to your showroom and buy your collection, and they said, it's nice the way you work, but I mean, honestly, we have to sell those pieces. And it would be so nice if this dress would be, instead of 3,700 euro, and we could buy so much more quantities. And then you say, okay, but with the markup you're expecting from us, that would mean a production price would be less than 100 euro. And you cannot buy fabrics the way we buy it, and you cannot produce the way we produce in an atelier in Berlin with people you pay in a good way, with a dress that costs less than 100 euro. I mean, if there's a secret behind it, I didn't find out about it in 10 years, but it's super, super difficult. And then on the one hand, the industry expects you to be the good people, and on the other hand, it's the reality is different. So yes, we have a ready-to-wear line now. We are selling our souls more than we thought, honestly, but we still try to be as good as we can, and I think this is what it is about.
Yeah. Julia, how does that kind of correspond with how you start? Your brand's a little bit younger, so tell us about what your principles were when you started the brand and how that's perhaps evolved in the last couple of years.
Yeah, way younger actually. We just kind of finished our second year. We're in the beginning of the third year, just showed our second collection actually. I can relate totally, and I know. Anyway, I hoped to hear something else, but I also know
Sorry.
that it is the reality, and we're also facing it. You wanna, I don't know, like for young brands and also for us, we start with an idealistic approach, and we know about the challenges, the problems that also Yasmin and Anne talked about, and we want to do it better. And then, we work with deadstock fabrics, and then you have a roll that you can make a certain amount of dresses out of, and then the retailer says, but I want to have 50, not 20, and then you're like, but the roll is finished, and then just order more, but it's deadstock. And so you're really questioning, is it really the way, and can it exist? And maybe you just have to find your right partners. And we don't have retailers yet who are selling in our own web store, but we want to go in this direction. So we have to see how it can work and who wants to also take on this challenge as a retailer with us and go on this journey and say, we can do it differently, let's try. Yeah, I'm curious.
Out of interest, why do you want to go down the wholesale route if you're finding that at least with this sort of direct-to-consumer approach, you can tell the story of your brand, you have that control over the narrative, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you feel the push to go to wholesale?
I think it does have to do with romance, something you said also, like it's this thing, you have a brand, and if you're in a certain store that you already relate to,
sure.
You wish to hang in that store next to this and this brand that you admire, and maybe this is a dream that is not so relevant anymore. We have to also think about it. It's also a question mark for me, because the industry is shaped in a certain way, and we have these ideas, and it's on us to question them and put something new on the table. Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like you talked about having sort of students who are, they don't want to be part of the problem. So how do we shift the system so that they're not graduating and they have a vision, and it's a beautiful vision of creating products that are perhaps made out of existing materials. They're creating products that people are going to love, and then they're coming out into a system that is built to kind of just completely eradicate that approach in a way. It's hard to find. There are some partners that you can work with, but it is hard to find them. So, how do you approach that with students?
Just picking up on what's just been said and in answer to your question, I think we have certain aspirations as designers, and actually I think we're learning that those aspirations were not necessarily the aspirations that are right now. Who you're hanging next to, which store you're in. Actually, the aspiration to be able to create something that somebody feels good in, and also you can feel good about, and you feel as if you are proud of what you've done, means that is no longer the criteria. And I think we've got 3 examples here of the fact that is really changing, and that's exciting. And Berlin Fashion Week and using the criteria that Copenhagen have used, and looking at the criteria for what is chosen being about the cultural capital of the collection, about the social impact of the collection, thinking about what it means to design, means it is changing. It is a massive challenge because there's a huge machine that is the industry that does not count the cost, but that is a broken system. We cannot keep extracting in the way that we are at the moment, and that will fall apart. A lot of businesses are very short-termism because they just want to make as much money in as short a time as possible. But actually that system the fast fashion system is on a road to collapse. It's just for us to actually maybe speed that road up by creating things that are an alternative. And I think it is happening, but at the moment, it is drowned out by the volume, and the conversation about how much stuff is being produced is something that needs all of us as individuals to make decisions about. It needs legislation. But I think also it's about a different kind of aspiration. And the more that we can show that aspiration, the more chance we have of, things come to be as we imagine them. It's up to us to imagine a different system and to talk about it and to give these examples, which is why today is important.
Is there a bit of an elephant in the room in terms of costs, though? So, you talked about the fact that the clothes, if they cost a certain amount to make, then people need to be able to pay for that, right? It needs to fairly, the price of the garment needs to fairly reflect that. And, you know, as you rightly pointed out, I think people are wising up to the problems with fast fashion. But the argument in favour of fast fashion, I suppose, has always been that it's, you know, sort of democratises fashion. It makes fashion more accessible to people. You're getting trends from the catwalk that people would never have been able to access before, or certainly not for a long time after, at a low price. That mentality is still there, I think, right? And it's obviously there are some problems around, you know, cheaply, if something's very cheaply priced, then you have a certain attitude towards it. It might be seen as more sort of disposable. But what about people who kind of go, well, this all sounds lovely, but I might not be able to afford that?
Am I allowed to use the word bullshit? If you look at the statistics of who is buying the cheapest fashion, it's middle to high income. There's an amazing report that I'd encourage anybody to read around the G20 countries and the amount that is being bought by different people in different countries. Yeah. There's a myth that the emerging economies are the problem. Actually, the emerging economies, at the moment, their trajectory up to 2030 is within 1.5 degrees warming. The UK is the fourth, so we're much more of a problem than Germany. But if you look at who is buying the most clothes at the cheapest prices, it's not the people who could not otherwise access fashion. So I think this kind of, we need to be able to create this model because of the poor people who can't afford anything else is not true.
Is a myth we need to bust.
And so I think that is really important. I think that if you look at what it means to be stylish, it's not about novelty. Yes, we all love things that are new, and the stimulation that we get by looking at something, you know, I myself, I was like, oh, that looks so exciting. But if you look at the statistics of what's being bought and how much of it is actually being thrown away before it's even worn, or being thrown away when it's worn once, then actually we're not getting very good value. Fashion has gone down in price over the last 2 decades, where everything else has gone up. Now, that can only tell you one thing. If everything else has gone up in price and inflation has meant that things are costing more and it's more to take things out of the ground or to grow things, that means that the labour is being exploited, the production is being exploited. So it doesn't add up. So at some point, we do need, all of us, to decide if we want to work in the sector, that we need to kind of stand up in what we stand up for and to make those decisions, however hard we are, and to ask the fashion councils and to ask investors to go on that road with us. And we've got examples here. But yeah, it's massively challenging, but it is starting to shift. And the more that we do to shift it, the more that old model, and nobody sets out to destroy the planet. We work with designers in massive companies. They don't want to be part of the problem. Even the CEOs of those businesses don't actually want to be part of the problem. But it's kind of like holding up because everybody else is holding up. And being a pioneer and doing things differently is difficult. But every single brand that we work with, even the ones that they've got massive production all around the world, all are looking to be able to do things differently. So it's people having the guts to go, you know what, we are going to count the environmental cost, the social cost, the cultural cost, and the economic cost, and the value in all of those terms. And the EU Green Deal is amazing because the well-being economy and looking at this new idea of prosperity being across those 4 different elements is starting to take traction, we hope. The UK is way behind, but yeah, the EU Green Deal is something that for us is an aspiration.
I'd love to pick up on a couple of points that Dilys made. I think changing the narrative, calling bullshit on narratives which really actually are not true.
And this is where the circularity models start to really come into their own, right? Because you know, what's more accessible than being able to buy something secondhand or rent it?
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, the way that the system's metrics are, for example, on growth, on volume, it means that young designers are thrust into a mindset that they're actually not attached to. I mean, from the beginning, I think both Julia and Nina have said it was about the passion that drove you forward for the design process, for the fabrics, for the dead stock, and all of that getting lost in translation because eventually you're going to need investors, and those investors are focused on growth metrics, which are more volume, volume, higher quantities, and that's not really the direction that we necessarily want to go in. I know I started my own activewear brand in 2019 and very quickly, thrust into minimum order quantities. And I think we have to really also not just talk about imaginary solutions, but really create them. So I'm creating a platform to allow for designers to connect with tailors all around the world and have a sort of decentralized production model, meaning that you don't have to work with, large factories with MOQs and so on, but really have a more grassroots approach. Made to order on scale is something which is a challenge, definitely, in terms of current production. So I think it's creating the new systems and having the audacity to sort of say, no, I don't want to go down that direction. But that's missing support from the industries, from the investors. And I do hope that, for example, as Dilys was saying with the EU Green Deal, CSRD reporting means that there's going to be much more concrete data points which companies have to prove that they're not being, that they are being sustainable, except for greenwashing.
And I was going to bring up the greenwashing question because, so many of these large companies and the ones that might, make the argument around their accessibility, these are huge companies. They're growing very quickly. They are not incentivized to change the system because they are making a lot of money out of this system, right? And so legislation is so important because it levels the playing field. How do you guys feel as designers when you're trying to approach things differently and you have a slower approach and you want people to cherish your products or you want to make to order, and then you have greenwashing is still so rife? Is that something that you kind of struggle with a little bit? How have you managed to kind of just put that to one side and just stay focused?
For me, I think it's important to tell your own story and to stick to your beliefs and target the right client, but also talking about targeting a right client. If you produce a garment the way we produce it, you are excluding a lot of people, as you said before, there are a lot of people who would love to buy RIANNA and Nina, and they love what we do with the brand, and they love the story we're telling, but they just cannot afford it. Am I my target client for a 3,000 euro coat? I'm not, and look at the people out there who love it, and the people who buy it. And when we have a store in Paris at the Palais Royal since 2 years, we had stores from the beginning, a small one in Berlin. Now we have a second one in Spain, in Marbella, and we talk to our client, and what we realized at one point, and we also have to be realistic with this, why does the client buy RIANNA and Nina? Because it's beautiful, because it's special, mostly because they are one-of-a-kind pieces. But how many of them, of course, they think it's interesting to hear, wow, it's vintage fabrics, that's so cool, you have an own atelier, wow, interesting. But do they really care about the sustainable part? I would say it's a very low percentage. And what you say about, is there a movement? When you look into this room, all the people here are young, interested in fashion, interested in sustainability. How many of you buy young designers? And why you don't? Probably because it's too expensive the way we work. And I don't see myself as a young designer because we said from the beginning, we are not young and we are no designers. I'm 41, I'm not the design part of the company. But we are just not affordable, and so many others out there too. So how many of you here in this room wear something sustainable right now? How many of you wear something from a young designer? And I think sorry to say this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a very small percentage. So most of you still go to the mass market, and it's not you, it's also me. It's like my friends, it's the people out there. Look at my shoes. It's like the way they are produced. It's like it's horrible. I'm still buying them. It's true. I love them. Nice color, fun. Or just 110 euro. Nice. I'm in Milan. I'm taking them home. Wonderful, easy. But is this a good shoe? No. Do I know this? Of course. Do I still buy it? Yes. So I think we also have to be super realistic in the way we shop, and we can talk about it. And of course, we have this vision and we have these ideas. But the reality, look at your closet. Look at my friend's closet. Look at my kid's closet. Do you think I buy, I have 2 kids, 5 and 2 years old. I buy Zara for them because they look like they are dirty every day. And is this, can I hand down the Zara garments for my 5-year-old daughter to my 2-year-old son? No, I cannot, because they're after a season, they're not nice anymore. And do I throw them away? Yes. Is this bad? Yes. But this is the reality we are facing. And I think pretty much all of you are the same. So I think I can talk about this a lot. We have a crazy long way to go. And even I don't have an idea how to make this a reality. And of course it's just the little things, and this is what it is about. Of course I buy Zara for my kids, and yes, I have these shoes on, but on the other hand, I try to be as good with my brand as possible. And I think it's a good mix, and this is a very personal decision.
Yeah, it's not only the designer's way, it's also the consumer's way. And we're
Exactly.
both.
We are both. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
a good person in way of consuming.
Yeah.
But I love vintage. I love secondhand. This is what I buy my whole life. I never buy a new pair of jeans. This is something that I think these are the little things that matters. But you can be pretty overwhelmed with like, I have to be sustainable. But like
But
how?
also, what does it mean? I mean, there's so many aspects. You can go into the material and the way of making, but also I think there's something super powerful about knowing your personal style. And that has to do with beauty, yeah, and that's subjective, and it should be subjective. But okay, if I have a re-nylon melted down jacket from Bottles, and I love this thing, and I will wear it for 10 years, and because I love it, this is the important factor here, then this is more sustainable than a bio cotton something that I only wear for 2 weeks and then. But like this little factor of like beauty also goes into many aspects. It can be the shape of something, like the feel on your skin, the breathability, just the fit, the finishings. Is it able to even last 10 years? Like, how can we improve this? So I think, I don't know, I see this both as the designer I am, but also when I buy, I'm thinking, okay, I have a white cotton linen shirt from this brand or from this brand, but here they stitched it twice. And this kind of education and knowing, okay, the beauty goes into, I don't see it as a detail here, but I know what it will do in the longevity of the life of the garment.
And when we were talking before, you mentioned, thinking about how different materials age, right? So when you're designing, you're thinking about this garment being with someone for a long time, and so how will it go through that journey?
Yeah, that's why we at Milk of Lime we chose to just work with natural materials, because I love how linen ages, how a wool gets character over time. And yes, even if it looks worn in, it looks like, it's shaped to your body. But this is a personal choice. Yeah.
I think
it's important.
I think definitely, I mean, your point about us being both designers and then also, contributing to consumption, that really has different perspectives worldwide. I mean, I am half from Lesotho, which is a small country landlocked in South Africa. And I know that definitely growing up, whenever we had an occasion or an event, we'd have something made for us by the local tailor. Yeah. For a wedding, the wedding couple will pick the color of the fabrics that, everybody who's invited has to do. And then everyone comes in their own designs with their tailors that have made these clothes for them. And that just really has a completely different relationship, I find, to the majority. I don't like using the word consumers, but just for facility's sake of the conversation, here we really are a lot in a trend mindset. Mm-hmm. What is the story that we're buying when we're buying clothes? We're fitting into a certain season or trends, or because we've seen things on social media. I mean, social media has definitely ramped up the amount of seasons that we're seeing with fashion brands, and that drive for novelty.
And that hype culture around different brands. We've seen all the drop culture around streetwear. All of that has carried that on.
Yeah, and what you're seeing, for example, in countries like India is that they're interested in buying fast fashion because it aspires to a European or a westernized aesthetic. Yeah. But really also in terms of cultures around the world. And I think to your brand, I remember when we were all prepping a little bit, you mentioned that a lot of your buyers are also in Dubai and in certain parts of the world where they're also used to having really, really special fabrics, things which they'll keep forever because of the beauty of it and because of the relationship that you have with the clothing. And I would implore everybody in sort of westernized systems to really, open your mind also to a different relationship with fashion, right? I mean, is it about the commodity, the facility, I'm fitting in with this season's trend, or, can we also be influenced from other cultures around the world who have completely different relationships with clothing? And I think that's where we can learn a lot. But ironically, this whole circularity is actually the mindset that you have in a lot of these sort of developing countries, because out of necessity, you have to be smarter in the way that you produce. You have to be more local and work with tailors and materials which are from your area, weaving processes which tell stories of your culture, which you wear with pride because you're also part of that culture. And I think, clothing nowadays in a lot of senses lacks any kind of real identity. It's sort of production for the sake of, and for the sake of staying relevant and staying, and that's where you've got all of these drop shipping models and all of these things where really you're just perpetuating certain trends. I mean, if you look at the way that Shein's business model is, that's exactly what it's about. It's identifying using AI trends, reproducing them because they can have a monopoly on a lot of small factories across Asia, and then in the cheapest, fastest way possible. So relationship is super important there, I think, yeah.
Did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say, what we're talking about here is complex systems.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about making points of intervention in those systems, it's about making lots of different points of intervention simultaneously. And the product itself is one part, but actually, if we look wider than that and think about, who we are, fashion is actually just a means for us to connect with each other and be social animals. It happens to be that we've got a really ingenious way of doing that through clothes, but the materials and the clothes themselves are actually a vehicle for us actually being able to converse with each other. So if we look beyond the product and think actually what are our identities, and I think there is a massive, and going back to the cultural shift, people realizing that if they're wearing something that actually is disrespectful to their own culture or disrespectful to their sense of what their values are, then you can actually shift things really quickly. Yasmin was talking about how we went with smoking from it being socially acceptable to for everybody else to inhale our smoke, to a point where legislation was brought in. That legislation only worked because culturally it was already acceptable. The legislation is starting to come in with extended producer responsibility, with actually putting a cap on production. And it's only because of the cultural change. We do need to ramp that up. It's not enough yet. But these, the legislation, the cultural shift, the small designers, all of these things happening simultaneously. It's not one thing that's going to change it. But if we all do these different things, fashion will really shift.
So we're running out of time. I feel like we could just sit here and put the world to rights all day, but we are running out of time. I'm going to come to you all for final thoughts. I just wanted to say that after this, I think there's a networking break, and I believe everyone's kind of hanging around. So if anyone has questions for the panel, then do feel free to come and have a chat. Final thoughts then. Legislation is coming, much needed, overdue. Hopefully will level the playing field slightly and help designers and brands that do have a better approach to kind of flourish. In the meantime, how do we foster that stronger emotional connection between consumers, as we're going to call them just for the purposes of this panel, between people, because we all do buy clothing. Yeah. So between people and clothing, particularly in the global north, where I think we have slipped so far, behind having that connection to things that are hanging in our wardrobe that we see every day. So if I could just kind of come to everyone on the panel for a brief final thought, that'd be amazing. So Thakane, maybe you could start.
Oh gosh, pressure.
Sorry.
I'm really lucky that I've got loads of pieces that I've inherited from, my sisters, my mum, my grandma. I would just say, oh gosh, no, it's really difficult. I mean, everybody's relationship to clothing is so personal, and it is difficult when you've not got a type of upbringing or education where you build a relationship to your clothing, but rather where you're just emitting trends and so on. For me, because of where it is that I'm working, I want to build a new system that allows for made to order on scale, meaning that people can really feel that this piece of clothing was created for me, not just thousands and hundreds of thousands of times, and I'm just the same as another replica down the street. And hopefully being able to do that in a way that creates impact with independent sewers, seamstresses, tailors, artisans, bag makers, shoemakers, connecting them with designers all over the world. That's really my mission, and I think through that kind of a system, people can start to really engage with their clothing again, knowing it's made for them. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think what's key in every relationship, in private or in business, is communication. When you talk about things, people start understanding, and this is what we do. We are lucky that we have things like Instagram, our social media channel. We have almost 200,000 followers, and we take them with us. We bring them to the atelier. We take them with us on the flea market. We show them the people we are working with, the way we produce, and we try to make them understand how special the pieces are they are happy to wear after they left our atelier. And they are part of the fabrics we use. They told a story. We have OBs from 1920. We use tablecloths from the 60s. They have told a story already, and we are telling our clients that they can continue telling a story when they wear it. And I think this is, again, the kind of respect they are bringing for the garment we produced in such a respectful way. And that's why our return rate for our online store is lower than 5%, because we educate the people. When they buy from us, the feedback we are getting is, wow, it's even so much more beautiful than I thought it is. Yeah. And we invest in beautiful packaging so people keep it. And it's something that we want them to realize. We love it so much what we do, so please love it likewise.
Yeah.
I have to agree to that. I think it's super powerful to educate, to tell the story, and really show how you're working. And there is a charm in being mysterious, and fashion does that very well. But I think maybe it's time to open up and talk about things, why they're done the way they're done. And then I think they start making sense. Mm-hmm. Because whenever somebody says, oh, it's so expensive, I say, but yeah, for this and this and this reason. And you're like, oh, actually, it's totally finely priced now. In their minds, it can be very quick. And I want to add to that also, I would love to inspire everyone to explore their own style, because I think it's so powerful to just know what's flattering, what has worked for you. And I think this is it's so personal,
yeah.
but I have had it myself, and I would love to, I don't know, remind people.
This is where I think secondhand and vintage comes into play, because you're not seeing 10 of the same thing, or just, going in and seeing something styled in a mannequin. You really have to search out items that you love. And so I think that's another way of helping to slightly shift mindsets, isn't it? Thinking about your own personal style.
Yeah.
Dilys.
And that idea that fashion is a distinction of being human, and we can decide what we want to portray. And what is your style? What is it you're saying about yourself? I think is so powerful, and it's easy to forget that. But I want to go back to the panel, love. So I think for me, love is what keeps us all connected. It's something that makes us kind of have a sense of ourselves, but it means commitment. Love is about commitment. It's not just a nice feeling. It's actually deciding that you're going to do something. So that commitment every day, what is that commitment? Whether it's to seek out an amazing designer, or seek out somebody that's looking at greater equity, or looking at beyond the status quo, whether it's about what you do or don't buy, etc. What commitment to love do you have in fashion? I think it helps me, because sometimes I see things, I'm like, no, I've committed not to do that. And then it's after 10 minutes later, you're like, you know what? No, I've stayed true to myself.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, thank you so much to my panel today. Thank you.
Thank you.